You won't believe what ABC was hiding behind the scenes of its biggest show. The cast was struggling, the executives were cashing in, and the truth? It's even darker than you think. Sexual harassment claims from day one, stars barely scraping by, and a bitter feud that nearly ended Ron Howard's career. This is the untold story of Happy Days, and it will leave you speechless. Back in the 1970s, America was in turmoil. The Vietnam War, the Watergate scandal, people were desperate for an escape. Nostalgia for the 1950s was at an all-time high, and TV producer Gary Marshall saw an opportunity. He envisioned a show that felt warm, familiar, something that reminded people of simpler times when teenagers worried about school dances, not politics. His first attempt, New Family in Town, didn't take off. ABC initially passed, but in 1972, they aired it as part of Love, American Style, renaming it Love and the Happy Days. It didn't make waves at first, but Marshall believed in it, and soon the network saw its potential. When Happy Days finally premiered in 1974, America was ready. The show was lighthearted, comforting, a perfect contrast to the chaos of the real world. It followed Richie Cunningham, played by Ron Howard, a clean-cut teenager navigating life in 1950s Milwaukee. But then, something unexpected happened. One character, one man, changed everything. Arthur the Fonzarelli, leather jacket, motorcycle, effortless cool. With just a look and a casual thumbs up, Fonzie stole the show. But here's the shocking part. Henry Winkler, the actor behind the legend, wasn't even the first choice. When he auditioned, he was an unknown. But the moment he delivered his lines, then tossed his script in the air, it was game over. He was Fonzie, and the audience? They couldn't get enough. At first, ABC had its doubts. They thought the leather jacket made Fonzie look like a troublemaker. So, they made a deal. He could wear it only when near his motorcycle. That small compromise changed TV history. By season 2, Fonzie's popularity skyrocketed. He wasn't just a character. He was a cultural phenomenon. Lunchboxes, action figures, comic books. His face was everywhere. He even won 2 Golden Globes. And behind the scenes, the power struggle was just beginning. The show might have been a nostalgic dream for audiences, but for the cast, it was far from paradise. Ron Howard had grown up in front of the camera, first as Opie on The Andy Griffith Show, then as Richie Cunningham. But as Fonzie's fame exploded, Howard's role was shrinking. ABC saw an opportunity and wanted to rename the show Fonzie's Happy Days. Howard was furious. He had been the lead, but now he felt like a supporting act in his own show. Reporters started asking if he felt like a second-class citizen on set. He considered quitting television altogether. But then, something surprising happened. Henry Winkler had his back. He pushed for Howard to get more screen time, refusing to let the show become a one-man act. In the end, the title stayed the same, but the balance of power had already shifted. And the rest of the cast? They were struggling in ways fans never knew. Happy Days was making millions for ABC, yet the actors weren't seeing their fair share. Many of them barely made ends meet, while executives pocketed massive profits. Marion Ross, who played the loving matriarch Marion Cunningham, brought warmth and humor to the show. But behind the scenes, she fought to be taken seriously. Tom Bosley, the show's steady father figure, almost turned down the role, only accepting after reading a particularly touching father-son scene. And then there was Erin Moran, Joni Cunningham. She was just 13 when the show began, playing the nosy little sister. But as the years went on, the industry and the pressures of fame took their toll. Anson Williams, who played Richie's best friend Patsy Weber, had his own battle. On the day of his audition, his car broke down in the rain. He arrived soaking wet, but somehow he nailed it. He became the lovable, sometimes clueless best friend with a hidden talent for singing. Meanwhile, Don Most, who played Ralph Malph, nearly walked away. He had dreams of being a serious dramatic actor, not a comedic sidekick. But producer Gary Marshall played a game of basketball with Most's agent to convince him otherwise. And just like that, Ralph Malph was born. Despite all the internal struggles, Happy Days was a hit. By 1976, it was the #1 show in America. Ratings soared. The audience was hooked. Music played a huge role in its success. The first season used Rock Around the Clock by Bill Haley and his Comets. Later, the show switched to an original theme song, Happy Days, composed by Charles Fox. But nothing, not the music, not the nostalgia, had a bigger impact than the Fonz. Yet, for all its charm, Happy Days had a darker legacy. Decades later, its early episodes sparked controversy. In 2022, a Canadian viewer filed a complaint about a Happy Days rerun, calling out, When Happy Days ruled television, it felt untouchable, a nostalgic ride through the golden era of the 50s that millions clung to every week. But behind the cameras, tension brewed. What started as a show about small-town friendships and family values evolved into something else entirely. And when the cast discovered their faces plastered on slot machines in 2008 without seeing a dime, the illusion shattered. Fans assumed they were cashing in big, but the truth? They weren't making anything at all. Marion Ross, Don Most, Anson Williams, Aaron Moran, and the estate of Tom Bosley took a stand, launching a $10 million lawsuit against CBS, claiming the network had withheld royalties. But here's the kicker. CBS didn't deny they were owed something. Instead, they downplayed the numbers, arguing the actors were only entitled to small payments, nowhere near what they expected. Mediation failed, and the fight escalated into a legal battle that put the entire industry on notice. This wasn't just about Happy Days. It was about how studios handle actor contracts, merchandising rights, and the unseen struggles of those who built Hollywood's biggest franchises. For Henry Winkler, things were different. The man behind Fonzie had struck a separate deal early on, ensuring he received royalties from merchandise featuring his iconic image. While his co-stars fought for scraps, Winkler had been cashing in for years. That gap in financial security bred resentment, with Don Most later admitting it was tough to see one castmate secure while the rest struggled. But here's the twist. Winkler had made a risky choice back in the day, agreeing to a lower base salary in exchange for back-end profits. That gamble paid off, especially as the show thrived in syndication. Meanwhile, Erin Moran faced the harshest reality. Once a TV sweetheart, she lost her home to foreclosure, a heartbreaking end for someone who had spent her childhood under the Hollywood spotlight. And just when it seemed like the Happy Days empire could do no wrong, the show made a move that changed everything. In 1977, in what was supposed to be an adrenaline-pumping moment, Fonzie strapped on a pair of water skis and, clad in his signature leather jacket, jumped over a shark. The stunt was meant to be thrilling. Instead, it became infamous. Audiences felt the shift. This wasn't the same grounded, heartwarming show they had fallen in love with. Though it ran for 6 more seasons, something had cracked. The phrase, "jumping the shark," was born, now synonymous with any show that loses its magic in an attempt to stay relevant. The network tried to breathe new life into the franchise with spin-offs, but not all of them stuck. Joni Loves Chachi launched with high hopes, but nostalgia alone wasn't enough to keep audiences interested. The show fizzled out after 2 seasons. Even bigger hits like Laverne and Shirley and Mork and Mindy weren't immune to behind-the-scenes drama. Creative clashes and shifting narratives sent them into decline, proving that lightning doesn't always strike twice. By the early 80s, Happy Days was slipping. ABC made a critical decision in the 1982-83 season, moving its time slot to compete with NBC's action-packed sensation, The A-Team. It was a disaster. Viewers tuned out, and ratings plummeted. As if that wasn't enough, key departures dealt the final blow. Ron Howard, the show's heart as Richie Cunningham, left to pursue directing. Still, the show had one last moment of glory. On May 8, 1984, after 11 years, Happy Days said goodbye. The 2-part finale, Passages, gave fans the closure they craved. Joni and Chachi's long-awaited wedding brought back a spark of the old magic, while Fonzie's emotional journey to adopt a young orphan showed a new, vulnerable side to the cool rebel. But it was the final scene that left everyone speechless. Tom Bosley, as Howard Cunningham, turned to the camera and raised a glass. In a rare, unscripted moment, He addressed the audience directly, thanking them for being part of the Happy Days family. And just like that, it was over. Or was it? Due to scheduling delays caused by the Winter Olympics, 5 more episodes aired after the finale, an odd, unintended postscript to a legendary run. But for true fans, Passages was the real ending. A perfect farewell to a show that had shaped pop culture, launched careers, and for a while, made us all believe in simpler, happier times. Happy Days didn't just disappear. It left a legacy. It gave us Henry Winkler, who would later reinvent himself in shows like Barry, proving he was far more than just the Fonz. Happy Days was more than just a show. It was a Hollywood saga of its own.